Welcome to my YouTube channel. Many years ago, in a little village in the beautiful state of Edo, Nigeria, there was a woman called Essie who lived with her little daughter. In their village, Essie was popularly known as a beggar. She begged for everything, from the clothing she and her daughter wore to the food they ate. But one day, she gained another title that would haunt her for the rest of her life: thief. That day, she had gone into the marketplace to beg for some fish, but the fishmonger angrily sent her away. "I have been giving you fish for the past 3 days. Are you going to keep begging your entire life?" the woman said. However, Essie would not give up. She kept begging the woman, but when she realized the woman's mind was made up, she took some fish from her table and began walking away, hoping the woman did not notice. "Ooh, ooh, oh," the woman shouted, alerting other people in the market. Essie tried running as fast as her legs could carry her, but unfortunately, some men were able to catch her. The market traders surrounded her and began accusing her of things she did not do. "I know you are the thief that has been stealing my yams," one said. Then another added, "I saw this thief walking through the market late at night." They all began to chant, "Thief, thief, thief." Then someone said what Essie feared the most. "Burn her," he said. "Let's burn her alive." It was an ancient practice to burn offenders, especially those found guilty of stealing. Essie shivered in fear and began to cry and beg for her life. It was indeed the first time she had stolen, but nobody believed her. Some traders ran to get items to light her up, but they were soon interrupted by a loud voice. "No, don't kill her." Essie looked up and saw a woman called Oses. Oses was a widow who was quite popular in the village because of her generosity. That day, she was in the market to buy some foodstuffs when she saw the atrocity about to happen. Because of Oses's reputation, the traders quit their plan to kill Essie. After all, most of them ate for free at her house. "Please let me take you home," Oses kindly told Essie, who immediately stood up, thanking her for coming to her aid. When they arrived at Essie's house, Oses was shocked to see her poor living conditions. But what shocked her the most was when Essie began to sing as they got to the door. Suddenly, a little child of about 2 years of age opened the door. The song served as a signal for the child to open whenever her mother sang. "Is she your daughter?" Oses asked. Essie nodded and said, "Her name is Adissa." Oses pitied the child the most because she knew that, in no time, Essie might corrupt her daughter into living the wrong type of life. So she said to Essie, "My husband died last year, and I live with my 1-year-old daughter. I would like you and your daughter to come and live with us until things get better for both of you." Essie was shocked because she had never received such kindness in her entire life. When her parents died, she was abandoned by relatives who took over her parents' house, leaving her to fend for herself. So even as a young child, she would trek to different villages begging for food, and when night fell, Essie would look for a convenient place to rest her head. But on one of those nights, a man took advantage of her, leaving her pregnant. Immediately, Essie began packing her and her daughter's belongings. Then they followed Oses to her home, and for the next month, Oses made them feel very welcome. Adissa was like a big sister to Oses's baby, Adinosa. Although they were the same age, Essie felt like Oses was the big sister she never had. But Oses was still worried about Essie because she wanted her to learn decent labor. Every day, she would ask Essie to follow her to her shop to sell her fabrics, but that kind of life was not very convenient for Essie. She was used to begging and receiving for free, as opposed to sitting and waiting for customers to buy before earning money to eat. It was the first time she had to work for something, and she hated the process. So Essie began to think of an easy way out, and an opportunity finally presented itself. One morning, she overheard Oses and a money collector talking. They were speaking about the monthly contributions the women in the village were making towards a new marketplace. The woman had come to collect Oses's payment, and they talked a little about how much they had gathered. When the woman left, Essie could not contain her joy. The money they spoke about was more than enough to give her and her daughter a new life, far away from that village where she would be able to buy several farmlands and pay people to till the soil. So every day, she monitored the money collector, watching how often she moved around to plan her mission properly. She soon realized that the money collector kept the money in a small hut behind her house. When Essie thought she had learned enough, she decided to make her move. That morning, she told Oses that she had a runny stomach and would not be able to join her in the shop. But Oses had a request too. "My daughter is sick, and I can't take her to the store today. Can you please look after her? I'll go with Odessa to the shop." Essie was deeply disturbed. How was she going to go about her mission with a baby in her care? She decided to go another day, but when she stepped out to spread some clothes, she came across a woman who lived in the same compound as Oses. "Thief," the woman said, mocking her based on her past. The people in the village had not forgiven her after the event that took place in the market square. Essie was very upset. She was sick and tired of the villagers calling her names, so in anger, she reversed her former decision and decided to steal the money that day. Essie carried Edinosa on her back and began walking to the hut where she always saw the woman keep the money. From her findings, nobody was ever around in the early hours of the day, but she was wrong. A certain vigilante had seen Essie trailing the money collector several times and reported her, so they set a trap and waited patiently for her to fall into it. The woman made it look like she was putting the money in another hut so that whenever Essie came to steal, the vigilante would trap her inside and punish her for theft. When Essie got to the house, she managed to break in and began checking through the items in the hut for the money, but she could not find it. Suddenly, a box caught her attention, and without any doubt, she believed the money was in there. But there was a big lock on it, so she dropped the baby on the bed and sneaked out to the back of the hut to get a heavy object to break the lock. But when she was sneaking back into the hut, the vigilante saw her. He quickly went to alert some of his friends, and they ran there with sticks of fire, ready to burn her alive. Essie had succeeded in breaking the lock but was disappointed to find nothing in there. So she decided to leave because she was getting scared. But as she tried to open the door, she realized it was stuck. The vigilante group had locked it from outside. Immediately, she heard laughter from outside. "Today you will die," one of them said. Essie started pleading with them. "There is a child in here. It is Oses's child. Please do not do this. Take her and leave me inside," she said. But they thought it was her child. "Liar! It is your useless child. Take her along with you to the land of the dead," one said. And just like that, they began setting fire to the thatched roof. The plan was to kill her as silently as possible because if they brought her out, someone might plead her case. As the smoke began to cloud the whole room, Essie kept begging, "Please, the baby. I beg you. She's dying." But all her pleading made no difference. Their minds were made up to kill her, and that was how she died miserably, with the greatest heartache, not because she would never see her daughter again, but because she was responsible for the death of Osis's baby, the only person who showed her the greatest kindness. The news about what happened to Essie and the baby began to circulate in the village, and soon it reached Osis. She doubted it because she had Essie's child, Adissa, with her. Despite her doubts, she decided to go and see for herself. When she arrived, the villagers were shocked to see her with Adissa, but Osis kept moving forward to where the corpse lay. When she finally got a glance, she immediately recognized Essie's half-burnt body. Then she looked next to Essie and realized it was her child that lay on the floor, almost unrecognizable. Instantly, she fainted. The next few days were terrible for Osis. Not long ago, her husband had passed away, and now her child was gone too. The villagers trooped in and out of her house to pay their condolences, but whenever they came in, they did not hesitate to look at Adissa like she was a curse. Some of them were even bold enough to curse the little child to her face. Osis, on the other hand, had not spoken a word to Adissa since the incident. She couldn't process what she felt for the child. Sometimes she wouldn't give Adissa food, and other times she would stare at her in anger. One day, she got so sick of seeing Adissa that she decided to abandon her somewhere. Osis took her to the border of another village and began walking away from her, but Adissa immediately started running after her. Several times, Osis would drag her back to the border, but Adissa would keep running back to her. After several failed attempts, she scolded the child and warned her not to follow her. Finally, Adissa listened, but as Osis walked away, Adissa began crying and calling for her. Immediately, Osis felt remorse. It became obvious to her that Adissa saw her as her mother, and she was wrong for blaming her for the mistake her mother had made. So she went back and hugged Adissa, and on that spot, she made up her mind to take Adissa as her daughter. However, her decision did not sit well with the villagers. As long as they were concerned, they would always treat Adissa like an outcast. As Adissa grew into a young lady, the villagers still had not changed their minds about her. They would usually tag her as the child of a thief or murderer. Their female children were not allowed to be friends with her, and their male children were not allowed to think of marrying her. Whenever she would try to get work from people, they would pay her less than usual because, according to them, they were doing her a favor. Her only happy place was at home with her mother. Several times, Osis would suggest, "Why not go to another village and start over?" But Adissa refused. Nobody was going to make her leave her mother all alone. Unfortunately, years later, Osis passed away, leaving Adissa all by herself. Adissa finally knew it was time to move out of the village because she feared that the villagers would kill her if they were given a chance. But she did not have the money to go. Fortunately, Osis left her a piece of land, so she decided to plant several crops on the land, sell the harvest, and eventually sell the land. She assumed that whatever she got from all of that would be enough to help her relocate. So all year, she spent her time tending to the farm. When it was time for harvest, she began getting ready to gather her crops. But one day, when she arrived at the farm, she saw some workers uprooting her crops. "Thank God you're finally here," a man said to her, coming out from the corner. She immediately recognized him as the owner of the huge rubber farm very close to hers. His name was Nosa, a very popular chief in the village. "I am reclaiming my land back. I want to expand my farm," the man told her. He said he lent Osis the land many years ago because of her kindness, but now she was gone. He wanted it back. Adissa began to cry. She knew the man was lying because she was present when her mother bought the land years ago. She tried to plead her case, but the man asked the men on the farm to kick her out. He would not even let her harvest the crops she had planted. Adissa ran to the Enog palace to plead her case because this was an obvious conspiracy. The Enog heard her and said he was going to invite her and Chief Nosa to the palace the next day. The Enog kept his word and called for a meeting. He also invited other chiefs. After both parties were heard, they were asked to return for the judgment in 7 days. But Adissa knew they would favor Chief Nosa. It was obvious from the looks on their faces, but she could not give up. That land was her only way out of the village. Every day she would go to the Enog's gates and cry, begging him to judge the case fairly. Each time, the king would listen from far away. He pitied her, but his hands were tied. Chief Nosa was a wealthy rubber farmer, and he contributed to the wealth of the village. After the 7th day, the Enog made a decision that would break Adissa's heart. "This is my judgment," the Enog said. "I have carefully thought about this, and from every piece of evidence presented, it is obvious that the land belongs to Chief Nosa. Everything on top and under that land belongs to him and nobody else." Then he paused for a minute and added, "Out of my generosity, I will give Adissa one of my lands in the western part of the village. Everything on top and under that land belongs to her and nobody else." Adissa screamed and cried. Everyone knew those lands in the west were barren. The villagers often wondered why the Enog still held on to it. The chiefs congratulated Chief Nosa, and Adissa was carried out of the palace. For several weeks, she stayed in her hut, crying and wondering what was going to be her fate. But one day, she decided to go and check the land to see if she could do anything to improve the fertility. When she got there, she saw how dry the land was and began crying again. Eventually, she went to get some seeds and farming tools so she could start planting. But 30 minutes after she began tilling the soil, she hit something solid. Adissa quickly removed the dirt and realized it was gold. But there was more. She kept digging several spots and found more gold. Suddenly, a man came out of the bushes. "Who are you?" Adissa said, her voice shaking. "The Enog ordered me to wait here every day until you found the gold," the man replied. Apparently, the day Adissa came to plead her case, the king realized she was the daughter of Oses, who had taken care of him until her death. Several times he had heard of Oses's generosity in the village, and he felt the best way to repay her was by not abandoning Adissa when she needed help. He knew he had to give Chief Nosa the land, but he also wanted Adissa to be compensated by giving her access to one of the best-kept secrets in the village. Those lands in the west were infertile because there was gold underneath the soil, which prevented plants from growing. Adissa, who thought she was without hope, suddenly had a lot of gold in her possession, more than enough to feed her generation. She decided to leave the village immediately to start life again. But before she left, she went to the Enog's palace, hailing him and singing songs of praise to God. People thought she had finally gone insane, but she did not care because God had given her a reason to smile again. The moral lesson of this story: be not deceived, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. This story is about two women who had the opportunity to be a parent to one child and how the decisions they made in their lifetime affected the life of that child years after they had passed away. Whatsoever a man soweth, it means the decisions you make, and to reap means the consequences of your decisions. good or bad. We all need to try our best to make the right decisions, not just for ourselves, but for the people who will come after us. And believe me, it's not just your children. Your decisions can affect your mother, father, friends, and so many other people. Thank you again for watching this story today. Please leave a comment telling me what you learned. And also do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel with your loved ones. Till next time. Bye.